everybody, so here is Black Angel again, and I'm here with a video about extroversion versus introversion. So I realized that during when I make a lot of my videos, um, I recognize that there's a need for more in-depth understanding, so not on my side but on your side. So a lot of what I say is based on knowledge that I take for granted but is not granted. So I decided to make videos every time that I recognize that are dedicated to this basic knowledge that is not so widespread. So this video is about introversion versus extroversion. The first thing that you need to know is that a lot of people out there believe that they know, I don't know what, but they're actually basically ignorant. When you think about psychology, you need to realize that everybody believes they're a psychologist, and everybody believes they know what psychology is, but those who truly know are psychology students, psychologists, and psychology researchers. So yeah, this is something to consider. Anyway, let's jump immediately on topic. So first of all, sorry about the low voice and the old clothing and everything, but I'm feeling quite sick. I had a quite rough time recently, and I'm not feeling very well. Anyway, I wanted to share this video regardless. I wanted to make another kind of video. I wanted to start talking about unlikely enneagrams in types so that it can actually exist. But before I can do that, we need to talk about what is introversion and what is extroversion. So first of all, whenever we talk about introversion and extroversion, you need to think of a bell curve. Now, I wanted to draw a bell curve, but what you need to think about is a bell. That's a bell curve, and it's made this way. So why do I want to think about a bell curve, also known as normal distribution and statistics? It's not actually because I want to have you focus on data, but rather because I want to explain something. Whenever we talk about introversion and extroversion in MBTI and socionics, we are actually talking about ambiverts. Why? Because you need to think about extroversion and introversion as a bell curve. And this bell curve sees at one extreme the introverts and the other extreme the extroverts. So what is an extreme introvert? An extreme introvert is basically what is known as a sociopath, so someone that completely rejects humanity, which is a psychiatric condition. Whereas an extreme extrovert would be the histrionic personality disorder, so another psychiatric case and another mental health condition. So whenever we're talking about introverts and extroverts, we're never talking about sociopaths and histrionics. We're always talking about the middle part of the bell curve, the one that is higher, that is shaped this way. So sorry, where is the camera? That is shaped this way. And we're talking about the part that is basically between my little fingers. Here. You see that? So that part there. So you have a bell curve that is shaped like my arms. The two extremes are extreme introversion and extreme ambiversion, going towards the middle. Sorry, I want to make it quite normal, but I can't. Anyway, going towards the middle, you start having less extreme psychiatric cases. We are still outside of the bell, though. We're still in the flat area. When the bell starts, there we start having normality. So between my fingers is where we are talking when we use MBTI and socionics. So MBTI and socionics are not made to elaborate psychiatric cases, but they are made to elaborate on normal individuals. So when I talk about normal, I'm talking about normal in brackets because we're talking about the psychological meaning of the term. So we're talking about what is mostly common. So the most common thing. Yeah, in this sense, we're talking about normal individuals. And normal individuals are ambiverts in the sense that even a quite introverted individual that belongs to normality does have some form of extroversion within them. What does it mean? Let's keep talking about the most extreme kind of introvert that still is in that area, and that still is an ambivert. Sorry, I don't need the two thumbs. The extreme introvert that is within the normality area is someone that only has a few friends, one or two friends, or one friend that doesn't have a lot of difficulties interacting with people, but that prefers not to. On the other extreme, we have an extreme extrovert still in this gray area, in this area of normality. And this guy here is someone that enjoys talking to a lot of people, always is out there, always does things, always socializes, always thinks about external things and so on, but still requires some time for themselves. That it is a few hours to check their things or something to do on a video game, for example, or whatever. The extreme extrovert that belongs to normality still has a degree of introversion within them. So this is extremely important because this sets the basis for mutual understanding among any kind of type. So it is possible for an INFJ to relate to an ESTP, to an extremely extroverted ESTP, by using their empathy and their ability to understand their own side of extroversion. Same applies to an ESTP, for example, that wants to understand an introvert INFJ. They can figure out that thing by thinking about those moments in which they require time for themselves. And that would be a very helpful way to understand others. So I believe that this thing is extremely important to know, because otherwise you are prone and inclined to think that introversion and extroversion are something that they're actually not. Second thing to say about introversion and extroversion, I talked about socializing, and that's actually not very precise and a good way to actually describe introversion and extroversion. Introversion and extroversion by itself doesn't have to do with socializing. It's rather, if you think about the terms and how they're built, we're talking about intro, inside, version, so orientation towards the inside, versus extroversion, so orientation towards the outside. So an introvert is someone that is mostly revolved towards their inner world, whereas an extrovert is someone that is mostly oriented towards the external world. So that's the difference, and that's why extroverts tend to be a little more sociable and introverts a little less sociable, because someone that is focused on their internal world and their place in the world is going to be less inclined to see others or to relate to others than someone that is looking outside and keeping an eye on the external world. So this is something extremely important to understand about introversion versus extroversion. What does it mean talking about socionics and MBTI? Where, for example, an INFJ, introverted intuition dominant, is going to be focused on their sense of cause and effect, on their idea, on their principles, on the flow of time as they see it, and so on. Whereas an ENFJ, that is an extrovert, is going to be focused on people, on their feelings and emotions, and their and the environmental movements revolving around the emotional atmosphere. So moods among people, how everybody feels within the environment, and what kind of atmosphere is being generated in a, emotionally speaking, in a specific environment. And as you can see, I'm talking about two people that basically share the same functions. ENFJ is extrovert feeling, introvert intuition, whereas INFJ is introvert intuition, extrovert feeling. So an INFJ absorbs the external emotional environment and finds their place within that environment through their sense of the flow of time, through their through their sense of cause and effect, and through their ability to actually fit in a situation through their sense of self. Whereas an ENFJ is going to try to manipulate the course of events, the flow of time, and manipulate the external environment through emotions to create the kind of environment that they want. So this is a very strong and very big impact of a difference between two very similar types. The closest the functions, the more similar the types. Another example would be INFPs and ENFPs. INFPs are concerned and revolved towards their feelings, their internal emotional state, how they feel about something, what they like and what they don't like, what they consider right and what they consider wrong. This is what the INFP is mostly concerned about, whereas the ENFP is more centered on the external possibilities and options that the world offers to them, the external harmony, not in an emotional sense, but in a more environmental, intuitive sense. The wholeness of the external situation, as it's called in socionics. We will talk about it in another situation, though, because I need to go a little more in depth myself about that thing. So this is what an ENFP is more concerned about. So an ENFP uses introverted feelings, so their sense of right and wrong, to adjust the external environment and to increase the number of possibilities. Whereas an INFP is going to use the number of possibilities and the external harmony to find their place within this setting, a place within the setting that fits their internal feeling of the situation. So introversion, my place in the world; extroversion, the world and what it looks like. This is the basic difference, but please keep considering that we're still talking about ambiverts. So that's why you hear a lot of people getting extremely angry when someone jumps out of the blue and goes like, oh, I'm an ambivert. That's because unless there's a psychiatric case of some sort, we're all ambiverts. And that's extremely important to consider and to keep into account. Another thing that a lot of people get angry about out there, and that you will see bad reactions to, is when someone jumps out of the blue and goes like, oh, this type is the most ambiverted of all types. No. There is no such thing as a type that is more ambiverted than others. There are actually types that are more introverted and types that are a little bit more extroverted. For example, an ESFJ would score, in my opinion, an extroverted feeling subtype. ESFJ would score as the possibly most extroverted of all types, whereas an introverted intuition subtype, INTJ, would score as the most introverted, but everything in between, everything else is just similar in one way or another. So there is no such thing as a type that is more ambiverted than others. There are more extroverted types and less extroverted types. And within each type, there is some people that are more inclined to the extroversion or less inclined to the extroversion or the introversion, and so on. For example, an INFJ extroverted feeling subtype is an INFJ that is a little bit more extroverted than average, whereas an introverted feeling INFJ is an INFJ that is less extroverted than other INFJs. Well, it's actually just these two subtypes. I'm going to open a parenthesis here. Gulenko tried at some point to go into every single function and create a subtype by every single function, but that wasn't considered helpful in terms of socionics, and it wasn't really accepted because it only causes a lot of confusion. So thinking about an extroverted sensing INFJ, you're basically talking about an INFJ that never met an ESCP in their lives, and that only were exposed to conflicting types, and that they are extremely wrapped up in themselves, defensive and aggressive. That's what you're talking about if you're talking about an extroverted sensing INFJ. In Golenko. So that's more of a way to spot health in people, which is not the goal of socionics and Enneagram, of socionics and MBTI, sorry. Enneagram is more about that thing. Anyway, yeah, so we talk about subtypes, two subtypes per type, one that has the second function a little bit more developed, and one that has the second function a little bit less developed. And that's not a matter of health, actually, it's just a matter of temperament. So personal life experience brings a person to build their personality one way or the other. So it's not like an introverted intuition INFJ needs to grow and become an extroverted feeling INFJ. No, that's not how it works. The introverted intuition INFJ is a person that is potentially perfect. Just as much as an extroverted feeling INFJ is a person that is potentially perfect. Potentially meaning that everybody has a chance to grow. They only need to want it. So always the same topic about the bulb. How many psychologists does it take to change a bulb? One, but the bulb needs to want to change. So yeah, introversion, extroversion. So once again, we're still in the realm of ambiversion. So we're talking about an inclination toward extroversion and an inclination towards introversion. And it's not about socializing, but it's about the orientation and the focus of attention of the individual. Please do not make confusion with the external or internal locus of control, because that's another thing, another psychology topic, and we're going to talk about it in another video. So this is everything I have about this topic. I hope it's going to help, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.